All right, we have a few new Nintendo Switch 2 news and actually some game leaks to discuss. Potential game leaks, I should say, that may be headed to the platform today. And we're going to kick it off with that. The source is none other than Wisbios. And if you look into their track record in the Switch 2 generation, not even just the end of the Switch 1, they're definitely putting out information that is, I would say, past the realm of hard to guess. So I do believe it's worth talking about. That said, they're not perfect on everything, and we want to take this one, obviously, with a big grain of salt before you set all your hopes, dreams, and expectations on these games coming to Switch 2. But they have outlined a few different third-party games that would be set to come over sometime soon, presumably. Then we got kind of a big warning for everybody out there that's looking to pick up Pokemon Legends ZA, because it does sound like, in true Nintendo Switch 1 release fashion, this game has leaked early online, and you might start to see spoilers about it. We also got an updated overview trailer just yesterday that we will highlight. Then we have some really good comments to cover from the Final Fantasy VII Remake series director on the Switch 2 and what kind of piece of hardware it is. And if you do things to optimize for games, he believes it's an amazing piece of hardware that can run pretty much all the modern day AAA games we would want to play on it, which is a great thing to hear. And finally, if you own Star Wars Outlaws for Switch 2, or it's one of those games you've been eyeing, there is maybe now another reason to give it an additional look, boot it up and check it out past this new patch that has been released, because it claims to actually deliver better visuals and performance for the game overall, which was already one of the more impressive third-party ports for Nintendo Switch 2 hardware. So we'll get on the same page with all of this info. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And we are going to kick it off over at X, where you can see the following post from Wisbios, where he says, Leak Express, Remedy Entertainment, Max Payne / Alan Wake, Max Payne 1 and 2 Remake / Alan Wake 2. And this is big if these all make it to Switch 2, Alan Wake 2 being really the one that I think many would probably be the most interested in seeing make it to the platform. Obviously, that is a very visually taxing, demanding game on other hardware, and it wouldn't really be outside of what we've already seen come over to Switch 2 in terms of quality third-party ports, in my personal opinion. I do actually think that when you look at Alan Wake 2, yes, it is very visually impressive from a lighting perspective and what they're doing with the engine, and it even had some performance issues on the modern day consoles with Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, but you do have games like Star Wars Outlaws that we're going to reference later that already looks and runs great on Switch 2, and you have games like Cyberpunk 2077, you have this Final Fantasy VII Remake integrated footage that we're seeing run on the hardware. Like, I don't think that Alan Wake 2 is really too far outside of that scope of what those games look like, so it would be a cool one to be able to play. But another big part of this post is, of course, the fact that he is mentioning the original Alan Wake, and that definitely needs a Switch 2 upgrade if a game ever needed one, because if you remember when we saw that game release on the Switch 1, it was a heavily downgraded port of Alan Wake, and while it did run and look okay in certain aspects, there were some noticeable visual quality sacrifices that had to be made, and even some of those kind of viral glitch videos making the rounds online just because of what it looked like overall from a visual standpoint, and it was not one of the more impressive ports to the Switch 1 generation of consoles. And hopefully this is the reality of the generation we're in with the Switch 2. Sometimes we see free upgrades from third parties when it comes to them updating their games if they get a Switch 2 version, and in other case, like Sega, in a number of cases, will just release a brand new game for the Switch 2, and there's zero upgrade path, which means you like actually have to legit rebuy the game, which is crazy and ridiculous. And then there's some other ones where, you know, Hogwarts Legacy, for example, if you own the physical or digital edition of that game, you get a heavily discounted price of the Switch 2 version, where it ends up being like $10 to actually get the upgrade done, and then you have the Switch 2 version ready to go on your additional console, which is definitely the ideal. Like, if that's the path they got to go, that's fine. But when there's no discount and you're just asking somebody to rebuy the game on a different hardware because you didn't update the Switch 1 version, that would be a big misstep, especially for the Alan 1 remake rumor in this particular case. I'm not a big fan of Max Payne necessarily. I just don't have nostalgia for him from back in the day, but 1 and 2 Remake probably would be set to make it over as some kind of combo pack, and that would be an interesting one to see come to Switch 2 as well. Moving on from there, I want to hop over to Go Nintendo, where you can see their following write-up, which outlines beware of Pokemon Legends ZA leaks as copies are out in the wild. And it has here Pokemon Legends ZA comes to Switch and Switch 2 on October 16th, 2025, or at least it's supposed to. While the multitude of us will have to wait until that date to go hands-on with this title, it appears some retailers have started selling copies considerably early, no doubt to Nintendo and Pokemon Co's dismay. It's unclear if Pokemon Legends ZA has been ripped and leaked online, or if spoilers from early players have just made their way to the internet, but the end result is the same. Spoilers for the game are now popping up all over social media, and while Nintendo and Pokemon Co are sure to try and squash them, it's likely they won't be able to keep up. In other words, please be careful out there when you visit online, as Pokemon Legends ZA spoilers could hit out of nowhere. And you do have a brand new overview trailer that we're going to put on screen while we're talking through this. This is an unfortunate thing that, you know, it was kind of nice here until super recently with Mario Galaxy 1+2. I noticed that one making the rounds online early again. Of course, it's a Switch 1 game. And that's just something we always had to deal with in the Switch 1 generation, is like go into spoiler lockdown mode ahead of time. And whenever it was Galaxy 1 and 2, those games have been out for over 15 years. It wasn't as big of a deal, but you do see some of these cross-gen games coming out like Pokemon Legends ZA that's about to be around the corner. And I just saw some headlines making the rounds in regards to this happening with Galaxy 1 and 2, and it's kind of a reminder. It's been nice with Switch 2 exclusive games like Bonanza, Mario Kart World. Obviously, nobody had a Switch 2 until Mario Kart World launched with launch day, but everything we've seen come out on the Switch 2 generation so far, we have not had this problem where you have to worry about mass spoilers online, because whether or not somebody steals these off the back of a truck or gets one early through retail through actually purchasing it, doesn't matter. Switch 1 is easily hackable, and you can easily dump your games online, and that is an issue because as soon as the ROM file starts to make the rounds, everybody emulates it, starts recording their gameplay, sharing it on social media, and you might see the ending segment of the game just browsing around online when you really don't want to do that and you want to save it for a first-hand experience for yourself. But overview trailer, besides all the spoilers and leaks potentially floating around out there, kind of go into lockdown mode with Legends ZA if you care about this stuff. I thought the overview trailer did a fine job. I still feel the same about this game. I have some concerns with the overall city aspect of it and it all just taking place in Lumio City. Outside of that, I am very excited to hop into this game. The real-time combat mechanics seem like a natural evolution and progression I want to see the Pokemon Company continue to lead into. The dodge roll mechanics, real time to get out of the way of Pokemon blasts and stuff like that, just seem awesome. Tons of new mega evolutions, and really just the overall environment of how it feels to catch and encounter Pokemon in Legends games so far have been the top tier for me in Pokemon franchise history. So I personally will be picking up this game day one. I will be covering it here on the channel, so get subscribed for that. But reason to both be excited and potentially a little bit cautious browsing around for Legends ZA footage online as of right now. Okay, moving on from there, Final Fantasy VII Remake director says Switch 2 is a truly amazing piece of hardware, talks about the importance of in-game lighting, and we tend to agree. And we'll just go straight down to the interview quote, which is provided to us from Automaton Media, and it has here, the Nintendo Switch 2 has great hardware specs. However, due to power consumption constraints, it's designed to dial back performance a bit in handheld mode. So since a straightforward port wouldn't be enough to make the game run stably in handheld mode, we had our talented rendering programmers put in extra work on optimization. I'm extremely happy that we have kind of managed to become a model case of a high-end game being ported for Nintendo Switch 2. In our experience, if you just use the hardware properly, you'll be able to deliver games at the quality players expect. All in all, my honest opinion is that the Nintendo Switch 2 is a truly amazing piece of hardware. And this is what I think is a really cool quote to look at when we have these instances where we really wonder why some games look and run incredible on Switch 2. You have WWE 2K25 sitting there running at 60 FPS and looking on par with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X version of the game. Like, it's literally hard to tell a difference. And then you have these other games, a lot of the sports games we've talked about releasing on Switch 2 recently, can't seem to get past 30 FPS on the console, and that is a big downgrade with certain gameplay styles, sports games being one of the big impacted ones. Now, to be fair, Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate is running at 30 FPS, FPS, a locked 30 FPS at that on Switch 2. But these type of comments about optimization, I believe, is the disconnect where some third-party devs really spend the extra time and work to do the work that is necessary to optimize the game to get it to run at a higher, more stable frame rate. And then you have other development studios that kind of just forego that, or they rush it out to meet the date of the other console releases, and you end up getting a port that is just less than desirable on the Switch 2 version, even when the Series S, something we know the Switch 2, even according to port studios and developers have said, the Switch 2 punches in the exact same realm of the Series S, with maybe some slight differences in the CPU side of things, but with DLSS and other tools involved, like as far as what you can get to run on the Switch 2 is very comparable to a Series S. And we have some of the third-party ports running at 60 FPS on the Series S, but running at 30 on the Switch 2. And so whenever you have developers kind of putting this out there in the media, like, hey, if you put in the optimization work, it will be just fine, and the Switch 2 is an amazing piece of hardware, that's obviously something that we would hope to see get better over the long term of this console generation, because the reality is dev kits are still fresh into the hands of all of these developers for the first time, and they are learning the hardware for the first time, which does matter for this conversation as well. But some cool comments in Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate I'm excited to hop into in January on the Switch 2. And we still got to figure out what's going on with Elden Ring when we talk about high-end third-party ports, because no communication on that game's release date. It's supposedly still 2025 for the Switch 2. We'll see about that. The further into October we get without any kind of communication, the more I'm setting my expectations to wake up to some kind of announcement one day that, hey, we're pushing this thing till February or March of 2026. Hopefully not the case, but hopefully more quality ports to be coming to Switch 2 as developers get more familiar with the dev kits from here, and they hopefully put in that extra optimization time. Speaking of extra optimization time, a game that already looked very impressive on Switch 2, Star Wars Outlaws, is getting a new performance patch. And you can see this following article over at My Nintendo News to close this out here. Star Wars Outlaws gets new update which improves performance and visual quality. And you have Ubisoft has released a fresh new update for the Switch 2 version of Star Wars Outlaws. This is a pretty meaty patch, as you can see from the patch notes down below. The main thing is the software update further improves the game's performance and visual quality when played in docked and handheld mode. The new Star Wars Outlaws update also brings a number of bug fixes and other things. And the long and short of this, you can obviously see the patch notes on screen, but then people have been looking into this online, and not only are there different, bug fixes and stuff like that, but lighting, textures, and different things that were just not as great in every area before are actually getting updated and looking better. When I had my hands on with the game and was talking about it for the video here on the channel, which I have not gotten a chance to go back and play it to completion because everything else is coming out right now, but my big thing was that it looked very impressive, enjoyable. I liked all my time with it from a performance perspective. The thing is that you could notice some texture pop in, and you could notice, certain textures just kind of looking off and not right if you do a side-by-side comparison with Series S or X footage and stuff like that. Well, it does seem like now some of that stuff may have been addressed, and some of the side-by-side stuff that I've seen go live online following this update seems to suggest that the lighting engine even got more upgraded, especially in certain areas, and it's just looking more impressive and better than ever. I don't know exactly what the sales numbers are looking like this thing for Switch 2 so far, but I'm assuming that because of the hype and it being one of the big third-party launch games for the platform, that it's kind of revitalizing a second wave of sales for Ubisoft for this game. So it's not surprising to see continued support and maybe some additional updates hit it, because my understanding was it pretty much underperformed on other platforms at release, and Ubisoft was looking for some way to kind of salvage this game, and the Switch 2 might at least be some level of a savior for it in terms of sales expectations, but we'll have to wait and see for the official numbers later on. But okay, guys, let me know in the comments down below what you thought about all the different stories we talked about today. What do you think about any of these supposed leaked games coming to Switch 2? Would you personally be excited to play any of the Max Payne games or an upgraded Alan Wake remastered for Switch 2? What about Alan Wake 2? Would that be a day one pickup for you? What do you think about Pokemon Legends ZA, the new overview trailer, and potentially some of the leaks floating around online? Are you going to go into dark mode to avoid some of those leaks? Are you picking up Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate? And what do you think about the comments about the overall quality of the Switch 2 and the dev kits that are out there? And have you picked up Star Wars Outlaws? And have you noticed any changes as part of this newest update if you did play the game both pre and post update? So Make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.